Right, so now it's official. So welcome to everybody on this New Year's Eve. What better thing to do for New Year's Eve to celebrate than to study a little Torah, right? Hopefully this will become like a yearly custom for us, and just keep on doing this. And by sheer coincidence, we're ending the year and we're also ending the first book of the Torah. The last Torah portion, Vayechi, will be read, is scheduled to be read this Shabbos, wherever they're going to be able to read the Torah. And this is the conclusion, bringing everything into closure, so to speak, and also literally. So Vayechi means, and he lived, and it's about the death of Jacob. So Jacob lived in Egypt 17 years, and then he died. That's page 293 in the Eitz Chaim Chumash. It's Genesis 47, verse 28, whatever additions you might have. That's where it starts. And Vayechi is a it's got its own special characteristics as opposed to all the other Torah portions. It's got very, very, I think, intriguing interpersonal scenes. There are important scenes between Jacob and his family. As he prepares to die, he knows that he's going to die, and he's preparing for it by connecting up with his family in different ways. And we have the very famous section where he switches his hands around in order to bless his two grandsons, the sons of Joseph, and he blesses the younger one over the elder one. And this, of course, has been a running theme throughout the entire book of Genesis, again and again and again, the older brother and the younger brother. So here it's the last iteration of that of that motif that's there. He calls the rest of his sons, and we have a long section in the middle of the Torah portion, which is a very densely worded poem. It's hard to understand. The translations are sometimes speculative. Different people write about, we don't know what this means, or I think it means this, that person says it means that. Even when we have the literal word understanding, we don't know what it's referring to a lot. It's a very dense poem, and it's hard to understand. And then we come back into the interpersonal, and we have the burial of Jacob. And then when Jacob is no longer around, we have the brothers looking at each other and going, now what? Because dad is no longer here. Joseph has all the power. What's Joseph going to do? So we have an encounter between Joseph and his brothers a final time. And then the very last words are Joseph's words to his brothers, saying that I need you. I have all the power right now, but one day I'm going to die soon. And this is after some time has passed. And he goes, I'm going to be dying. You're still going to be here, but one day you're going to leave. Don't leave me behind. And that's the ending of the book of Genesis, where the brothers are made to swear that they will not leave Joseph behind. And he dies. And the last words of the book of Genesis, Vayisem ba'aron b'Mitzrayim. And he was placed into a coffin, into a chest in Egypt. And that's the closure, literally, right? And he's put into a box, and that's the end. So that's a rough summary of what we've got here. Does anybody have a particular piece that they want to focus on, a particular section of this series of sections? Anybody have anything specific that they want to look at? Going once, twice, 3 times. All right, let me ask it a different way. Do we look at the interpersonal stuff or do we look at the poem?
The poem.
I'd always vote for interpersonal, but
I go interpersonal.
So we've got 1 for poem, 2 for interpersonal, 3 for interpersonal. All right, 4. Oh, either that or you're waving. I don't know. That's so it looks like, sorry, Geraldine, you're outvoted. What can I tell you? And there's a lot of abstentions here. So afterwards in the in the caucus rooms, you can try to see, talk to a couple of people, say, why didn't you vote for me or something? Okay, so interpersonal. All right, so now we have the question of the interpersonal at the front or interpersonal at the end. So I'm going to vote for the interpersonal at the end. Was that thumbs down? Is that thumbs down, Jen?
no, thumbs up. Yeah, I think it's super sad that for Joseph and his brothers, but we can go do that.
That's where we're gonna go. Let's do that. So so in order to start from there, let's go to page 308 if you have the Eitz Chaim. This is chapter 50, the last chapter in the book of Genesis, chapter 50, and we're going to start from let's start from 13, just so we get a little bit of a moving through into the situation that we're going to look at. So let's start from let's start from verse 10. Okay, who wants to read? Somebody's got to read verse 10, chapter 50. Geraldine, did you say that? Go, please.
When they came to Goren Ha'atad, which is beyond the Jordan, they held there a very great and solemn lamentation, and he observed a mourning period of 7 days for his father. And when the Canaanite inhabitants of the land saw the mourning at Goren Ha'atad, they said, "This is a solemn mourning on the part of the Egyptians." That is why it was named Abel Mizraim, which is beyond the Jordan. Thus his sons did for him as he had instructed them. His sons carried him to the land of Canaan and buried him in the cave of the field of Machpelah, the field near Mamre, which Abraham had bought for a burial site from Ephron the Hittite. After burying his father, Joseph returned to Egypt, he and his brothers and all who had gone up with him to bury his father.
So that's the burial is finished, the mourning is finished, and then they return to Egypt. I just want to say something about a curious feature that's here, which I don't have a lot of understanding about, and that's why the Jordan is mentioned a couple of times. It seems as if the narrator is speaking. Well, if we imagine Moses talking, it makes sense. Moses is all the way to the east, and Moses doesn't cross the Jordan. And then it's on, then because it says here, as it says it in a couple of places, beyond the Jordan. That's in verse 11. And then again, it says it in another place, right? I thought it was twice. But I don't remember it. Okay, so Be'ever HaYarden, that's in verse 11. Okay.
In 10, it says.
And in 10, good. I knew it was in another place, right? Good. We're in Goren Ha'atad, right? Which is Be'ever HaYarden, right? Which is beyond the Jordan, on the other side of the Jordan. So it's as if the Jordan is a marker here, and the Jordan is not at all a marker. If you look at the note about Goren HaAtad, they're coming from Egypt, which is west of the land of Canaan, and they're moving east, and they never get to the Jordan, because the land of Canaan is what you get to first, and then the Jordan is all the way to the east as an eastern border of the land of Canaan. So no, there should be no mention here of the Jordan. The Jordan is not significant in their trip. But if Moses is talking, and Moses is all the way to the east, remember, because when the Israelites left Egypt, they had to go a roundabout way, and they didn't go straight from Egypt into Canaan. They went down and around, and then had to come back, like this, and they had to come then from the east and come into the land of Canaan by crossing the Jordan, and Moses didn't. So if the narrator is standing somewhere all the way to the east, then it would make sense to me that you have this being mentioned. But if it's being told, in real time, so to speak, of the story, and the narrator is just flying up, and watching everything as they're moving, it's a little bit strange. So it seems to me that there is this interpolation of aside from the other side. It also, of course, gives us an echo, not just of something that hasn't happened yet, Moses, and the entry of the Jewish people into the land of Canaan much later, but it also reminds us of the initial patriarchal odyssey, right? The patriarchs, all of them, one way or the other, had to deal with crossing the Jordan. So Abraham, of course, goes on the first trip. Abraham and Sarah, Lech Lecha, get moving, get out of Mesopotamia, go to the land of that I'll show you. That's not what I want. I'm sorry. I'm trying to get rid of something here. With Isaac, it's actually not Isaac who crosses the Jordan, but it's Rebekah, his better half, so to speak, in many ways. And then, of course, Jacob has to cross the Jordan twice. He has to go back to Rebekah's family when he runs away, and then he has to come back again, back home. And now, of course, he is in the land of Egypt, and he comes back home in a coffin to be buried. So whether there's any of that kind of association, that might be there as well. But what we have is with the death of Jacob, and it's not clear whether the brothers really know this or not, or whether this is the end of the patriarchal era. Right? There are no more patriarchs after Jacob. Joseph is a powerful man, but he's not a patriarch. None of the heads of any of the tribes, Judah, Reuven, anybody, none of them takes on patriarchal status. It's done. So this brings that whole way of being, where you have a family, a clan, an extended clan, with a patriarch, with the big daddy running the family. That's it. It's done. Yeah, Audrey.
Why is that? Why isn't Joseph a patriarch? Or
Yeah, good question. So what, anybody have thoughts about it right now? I think somewhat, if we keep that question going, maybe that's also going to a little bit inform how we read what we're about to read.
Okay.
If we have any thoughts right now, then please. Yeah, Jen.
I feel like Joseph wouldn't be he's not in the right birth order to be a patriarch, and he's not doing the pastoral thing
Jacob
himself.
wasn't either.
Yeah, but he's not doing the pastoral thing. He's not out
Isaac
there.
wasn't either.
There's a whole, it seems to be connected with, his brothers are still doing the pastoral. I feel like they might be kind of, even though we don't acknowledge them as patriarchs in the same way, they might have a more patriarchal organization within their family units. But Joseph is a little removed from that. I guess he might be head of his own household, but he's probably more citified and, doing his overseeing Egypt thing. So he's not overseeing flocks and, 500 kids and all different wives and stuff. He's in a different position. So, but I feel like for the brothers, it might be in their individual units, they might still have a kind of patriarchy.
Absolutely. And we have it later on also when we have the tribal set up as a nation. There's the Rashi Batei Avot, and the heads of the patriarchal families. So yeah, it's a patriarchal society. I think that the 2021, I think, is the last year for patriarchy, and so it's still going on, but as a unit, we've gone past it, so that there are many patriarchs, but there's no one big patriarch. Yeah, Audrey.
I have an afterthought, which could be that Jacob had his family with 2 wives and 2 concubines. So maybe it's the issue of the maternity of all of these people that created this breach in the patriarchy.
Right. So I don't know if that's the case, but the word breach, I think, is I think very applicable. What we have with this family is, first of all, 12 sons is not one son, right? The patriarchy goes from Abraham to the one son Isaac, from Isaac to the one son Jacob. There's a sifting out of the rejected son, but now we've got 12 sons,
right?
And no matter how angry Jacob is with any of the sons, and he gets pretty angry in the poem, he gets very, very angry. He doesn't read them out of the family. They don't get kicked out, right? So the family is growing, but at the same time, the family is broken, right? It's getting to be a bigger unit, but it's also getting to be it has been a very fragmented unit. The paradox of them being one family, and yet a family that is, incestuous, murderous within the family, as opposed to some kind of break where somebody gets thrown out of the family. Nobody gets thrown out of the family, but terrible things are happening in the family. And the family, as we've read already, God says, you're going to become, all of your sons will become great nations. They're going to become a people. They're not going to be a family anymore. The patriarchate disappears as the people become more of a nation. But we're going to see that part of that unity and fragmentation plays out in the piece we're going to read right now. So we're on what? Who? Where? What?
Joseph is just the ancestor to 2 tribes, unlike his father, his grandfather, his great-grandfather. He's just sort of he's a minor patriarch.
Right. Well, each
partial
one,
patriarch.
He's a partial patriarch, and what Jenn was saying before, each of the brothers is a patriarch to his own tribe. Right. So there's Bnei Reuben, there's Bnei Menashe. There's every tribe looks up to. They have their name from a son. Each son gives their name to a tribe. So that's not nothing. And of course, Joseph gets double. Joseph gets a double portion. He gets 2 tribes. So in that sense, he's partial, but he's actually double partial compared to everybody else. That's one of the gifts that Jacob makes here, that Joseph gets, in one sense, the gift of the firstborn. Yeah, Marty. No, you're muted. Just hit it once.
Is it okay now?
Yeah.
The text here says that his sons carried him. Yet in a contemporary Jewish funeral, the sons never, or daughters for that matter, never carry. The pallbearers are either the grandkids or honorary people. I've never seen a funeral where the children, carry.
That's, those are conventions, customs. There's no rule to say that not. In fact, quite to the contrary, the mitzvah of burying somebody falls directly on the person's family. So, for instance, shoveling in the dirt, we give the family members, the direct immediate family members, we give them, the first opportunity to do that. There's no reason why the pallbearers can't be the family. To a certain extent, it's just simply courtesy, consideration. The family is broken up and emotionally distraught, and we want to spread some of the honor. The person who is deceased, we want to honor them as much as we can. So here there's a gigantic, retinue of Egyptians that are giving Jacob a lot of honor, but in the end, it's the sons who are credited with carrying him. Did they actually physically carry him, or are they simply the ones who are, making sure that he gets carried? I don't know, but there's no reason that family, immediate family, can't be pallbearers.
Thank you.
All right, let's go now to verse 15 and let's get into the discussion between Joseph and his brothers again.
When Joseph's brothers saw that their father was dead, they said, "What if Joseph still bears a grudge against us and pays us back for all the wrong that we did him?" So they sent this message to Joseph. "Before his death, your father left this instruction. So shall you say to Joseph, 'Forgive, I urge you, the offense and guilt of your brothers who treated you so harshly. Therefore, please forgive the offense of the servants of the God of your father.' And Joseph was in tears as they spoke to him."
Okay, so here's the opening of this scene. So the what do we see in terms of where are these people? Where do we locate them? How do we picture where they are? If we have to stage this?
It sounds like it happened just after Jacob died, not necessarily after the burial when they've gone back. It sounds quite immediate to me.
So it sounds immediate to you. And then what does it say? But what do we have here in terms of, I'm trying to tease it out very, very slowly. The brothers are talking to each other. They're not talking to Joseph. That's what I'm driving at.
Joseph isn't right there.
Joseph is not right there. So that takes away the immediacy part to a certain extent. It's not like they're all coming back in the limo.
But they have messengers to send to Joseph. It sounds more like he's up at the palace.
So, right. So there's definitely a distance here. All the brothers are together, or at least they're in communication with each other. And Joseph is off on the side. They're not all in one place, literally or figuratively. Joseph is still off there someplace. And they are talking to each other without Joseph being part of it. And they're going, that Joseph guy, who the heck knows what he's really thinking? Now that dad is gone, what's going to stop him from seeking revenge? So there are assumptions that are being made by them, but it also just sees there's a psychological and there's just a geographic, a spatial distance between them and him.
Yeah, so he's definitely not one of them, right? Like
he's not, despite what he said before, right? Which we remember from last week when he embraces them. Here I am, I'm Joseph, your brother. I'm going to take care of you. This is all God's doing, right? He said all of that last week already. In other words, actually years later, we're still in this spot. 17 years they've been together in Egypt. That's what we're told at the beginning of this Torah portion. Jacob loses his son Joseph when Joseph is 17, and then he regains his son Joseph and lives under Joseph's protection for 17 years, and then he dies. So 17 years, the brothers and the whole family are reunited, and yet there's this tear, there's this separation that still persists, and they're suspicious of him. And the assumption that they have been making, maybe their fear is, he didn't want to do it when Dad was alive. He loves Dad. He doesn't want to give Dad more grief. He doesn't want, Dad wanted all of us to be together. He called us all together when he gave us his blessings, such as they were. But he made the effort of saying, everybody, I want you all to come here together. I have to talk to you before I die. So they're assuming that somehow or other, maybe Joseph wanted to respect his father or just not get into the mess with his father. But he really has been plotting all along to get them. Right now, of course, they were plotting all along to get him years and years and years before. So that's what they see as the possibility. And then 16, so they sent this message to Joseph. And the word is vayitzavu, and then it says avicha tziva lifnei moto lemor. So the word is like to charge, to command, right? Ko tomru li Yosef. So this is what you shall say to Joseph. This is, they're quoting supposedly their father Jacob, who is saying, so shall you say to Joseph, forgive, I urge you, the offense of your brothers. So what they're saying is, of course, is that Jacob is not telling this to Joseph. Jacob told them to tell him in his name to forgive the brothers, right? So if this were really true, why didn't we have that very emotional scene before with just Joseph and Jacob? It would have been, very touching and appropriate if Jacob could have said, look, I'm really messed up. I put you in a terrible position, and the brothers were also, they acted so terribly to you, but, forgive them, please. I take it on myself. Let's make one family here. So none of that happened. And now the brothers are saying, this is what Jacob is begging you or commanding you, Joseph. Dad's voice from the grave, forgive your brothers for all of the sins, right? That they committed. And how do they identify themselves? Forgive the offense of the servants of the God of your father, right? So there's the God of your father, and we are the servants of Dad's God, right? So there's this patriarchal recognition. And then what's Joseph's reaction?
He cries.
He cries. Joseph has cried now something like 4 times, right? He keeps on breaking down crying. And we've actually heard that apparently he was crying when they threw him into the pit. He's been crying and crying and crying, and now he cries again. It doesn't tell us what the crying is, but that's for us to try to empathize and feel it out. David, what do you want to say?
For better or worse, I think we need to imagine what's been going on for the 17 years. Joseph still has these responsibilities. What is he called? A vizier?
Mm-hmm. Or viceroy.
He's still working. He's still on the job. He still has enormous responsibilities. He's running this corporation. And his brothers are off minding the flocks with their families, what have you. I kind of suspect they don't see much of each other for the 17 years.
Yeah, no, I think that's a good assumption to make. That's part of what we can just tease out from what, from how this is set up. It's not sinister unless you've got a guilty conscience, or unless you're paranoid, or unless you've got some other things going on. Yes, everything could be absolutely naturally understood, but the brothers are worried. And Joseph cries when he hears that his brothers just do not trust him, that they are, or what is it, or what would be another reason for him to cry? What other things could be going on in his heart? Audrey? No, you're on mute. It's like a motif today. What do you have to say?
Hang on.
Good.
Okay. Is it clear in the story that Jacob understands what happened to Joseph?
Totally unclear.
It's unclear.
It's totally unclear. If anything, I would say that the argument, I think, in my opinion, is stronger, that Jacob either didn't know or didn't want to know, and that this was never actually in the end aired out and cleared up.
You know, I'm going out on a limb here, but it sounds like the brothers made this up. And maybe Joseph is crying because he knows that, like they're lying again.
So
Or
a
they're
lot
not
of it-
trusting him.
Yeah.
The
So
relation- He
there's a
sees
whole-
that the relationship isn't healed.
So is he upset because they're liars and he's just a paragon of truth telling? What is the fact that they're lying?
Well, that the
no.
relationship is still broken.
There is no relationship. That's the,
Well, let's
That's-
not go that far. Let's not
That's
go
pretty-
that far. But yeah, there's a traditional commentary. I think that you even have it in the notes here someplace, that takes it for granted that they made this up. The difference between lying, and they've lied before and they've covered up before. Here it's a lie. And the Talmud says that from this we learn, mutar l'shanot mipnei hashalom. You're allowed to lie if it's to make peace.
Oh,
So in this case, they are making it up, but what they're making it up is so that hopefully their brother will, let them live, will not go on a rampage against them. So this is considered okay. We have other places where we've seen people tell white lies or bend the truth or do things like that.
Aaron.
And with what?
Aaron.
With Aaron, he's considered a paradigm of a person who runs after the peace by telling white lies to people to make them become friends back with each other. We have the erasure of God's name when we want to try to make a husband who's jealous forgive his wife or calm down. We have God lying when God tells Abraham that Sarah laughed about herself and not about him, to keep shalom bayis. So the truth is God's seal, and yet God's name is also shalom, and the truth is secondary to making peace between people. So he's maybe sensing that they're lying. So, but the lying is because they're truly afraid. They're truly afraid of this guy, right? They know that he could do whatever he wants. Yeah, Marty.
Rabbi, if they weren't truly afraid, perhaps one of them would have gone to Joseph rather than sending a shaliach.
Right. So that's the other thing. In the next verse, they're going to come. In the next verse, right? Sherilyn, read us the next verse, please.
His brothers went to him themselves, flung themselves before him, and said, "We are prepared to be your slaves."
Okay, so let's stop there for a second. So yes, they finally do it, but they don't do it until they first send that messenger, right? So this is like preparing the way, and then they do it, because I think that is also psychologically true. They're trembling. They wanna put out the feeler first that they need this forgiveness, because if they just show up, who the heck knows? They'll get thrown in jail immediately, right then and there. So there's worry. Coming back to Joseph, he's crying. So is he crying simply because the relationship clearly is not what it should be? But as David says, how good has it been all along? Is this a shock? Is this something that is news to anybody? Yeah, Jen.
I feel like it could be a shock in that the brothers might have behaved differently with Joseph when their father was there too. So it could be that it's something different than Joseph. Joseph might have thought they were different than they apparently are. They might not have been throwing themselves at his feet left and right. So he might not have realized how alienated they are. And also, am I the only person who hopes like Joseph really got along with his in-laws and had like a normal family life apart from all the drama he's got with his brothers? Like, I really hope that he had some, some family somewhere that was normal and happy, and, it's better than the alienation he has with his brothers.
Right. Yeah, no, we don't know. We don't know. We don't know. We have no idea that the death of Jacob, something maybe has changed. The family interactions may have been filtered through Jacob. One of the things, yeah, Michael.
It's reminiscent from before when Esau is very angry at Jacob for stealing the blessing, and he says, "Just wait until Dad dies, then I'm going to go out and I'm going to kill the guy."
Right. Right.
And then what does Jacob do? He crosses the Yavok River,
Right.
and he sends a battalion of
that's 20
children
years later.
and women,
That's
and
20
another
years
battalion
later.
of children and women. It's sort of this parade of people coming before he actually meets his brother.
Right. So to soften things up a little bit. That's also, there's a lot of, that's what I was saying before. There's a lot of tying up things by bringing stuff from before and then changing it a little bit, or, fixing things or not fixing things. I want to just also suggest that one reason that he might be crying is because he does not want to be seen as Lord and Master of his brothers. Once upon a time, maybe he wanted that when he was a 17-year-old brat, but he's come a long way. And it's like his whole life. And he tried to tell his brothers, this has been a journey for me, and it's all been under God's direction. And it's been something that's really all been for the good. And it's not about, I'm going to take care of you, but I'm not your ruler. And they can't get it out of their head, right? They as they throw themselves down, they go, we offer ourselves as slaves to you, as servants. That's the same words that the Egyptians said to beg for food when at the end of the famine, which is the way that in the end all of Egypt gets turned into the hands of Pharaoh. This is them seeing their brother not as their brother, but as this potentate. And he doesn't want to be that for them. He's okay with being that for Egypt. That's his job. Like you said before, David, that I got a big operation here to run. But that's not what he wants in his family. In his family, he wants them to be brothers. And they don't see him that way. Let's see. Let's read okay, David, your comment, and then we go back to the reading.
In my mind, something to do, I think, if not now, then some other time, is to go back and see what happens after Judah approaches and they all let their hair down, and there's the first crying. Did they bury the hatchet then? So that it sort of asks for a rereading of last week.
Right. And it's the answer is that a little bit of the hatchet gets buried, but apparently not the whole thing.
Yeah.
Apparently not the whole thing. Yeah. Okay, we're up to verse 19.
But Joseph said to them, Have no fear. Am I a substitute for God? Besides, although you intended me harm, God intended it for good, so as to bring about the present result, the survival of many people. And so fear not. I will sustain you and your children. Thus he reassured them, speaking kindly to them.
Okay. So that's the end of this scene. So Joseph directly addresses the first part, right? And he says, don't be afraid. You're afraid. You're afraid of me. Do not be afraid. Right? And then he says, Ki hatachat Elokim anochi, ani, am I, under God? Am I God's surrogate? That phrase actually has occurred before. That phrase was used by Jacob in a different context. When Rachel comes to Jacob and she is frustrated like crazy because her sister Leah has children and she has no children, she says to Jacob, give me children. Why are you withholding children? You give Leah children. Why don't you give me children? And Jacob says, am I a surrogate for God? It's all in God's hands. So we don't have time to go into that whole scenario, which is a very emotional moment. But that was ages ago, right? But the phrase is echoed, another one of the echoes. We're not tracking every single echo from before, but this is an obvious echo. And Joseph is saying, it's not up to me, it's God. That would be one way of looking at it. But I would suggest another way of looking at it is, what if, and this a little bit addresses that whole scene over there. What's Jacob doing over there? Jacob, when he pushes away Rachel and he dismisses her pleas, it sounds almost a little hard-hearted. Not almost. But maybe this was something that Jacob said. And Joseph here is quoting Dad. He's quoting his father. This is a phrase that Dad used to say. And he says, I learned something from Dad. It's not me, it's God. And this is not something that I personally now have, an agenda here. It's all what God has tried to create. And in the end, it is lahachayot amrav. Here we have in the translation, the survival of many people. I don't know what the word survival actually etymologically comes from. I guess the word life is in there. The viving part maybe is life. But lahachayot is literally to bring to life a great many people. And that's my job. I'm here to not to kill you guys, not to torture you guys. God put me in this world to bring life to people. I'm going to take care of you. That's who I am now. So you see me as an awesome, powerful, scary person. That's not what God wants me to be. Yeah, Geraldine.
Well, just a question. Does it have to do with the fact that Joseph has more faith in God and God's plan than the brothers do?
So who knows? How do you measure people's faith? Can you decide who has more faith and who doesn't? They themselves say, we are the servants of our Father's God, right? We put ourselves at the mercy of God. We've tried to serve God, and now we see you, and that's what he says. He says, I'm not God, right? And then, but he's also honest, right? He says, you guys did really want to do me ill. You really chashavtem alai ra'ah, right? You really thought, evil for me. But guess what? God wanted it to be all good. So I'm okay. I'm okay with this. Yeah. Anybody else? Wanted to say something. Okay.
There is
Yeah.
there is one interesting thing here. I never really thought about before, but at this point in time, the Israelites are volunteering for slavery, aren't they?
Yes. 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 Right. But slavery to their brother.
The brother.
Right.
In
They
Egypt.
haven't gotten out of that dream interpretation,
Right.
which supposedly predicted that they would be subject to him. And he's gotten out of that. He says, that's not what the dream was about. That wasn't that you should be subject to me, right? It was that you'd be coming down, and this way I'd be able to take care of you. Yeah. Okay. The last few words of this section. In the Hebrew, Vayinachem otam, vayidaber al libam. Thus he reassured them, speaking kindly to them. Okay, and the literal translation is Vayinachem otam, and he comforted them, reassured them is okay. Vayidaber al libam, and he spoke to their hearts. Right? He tried to talk in a way that would make their heart move. Right? So what did he say? You don't have any record of what he said. Right? You could read this as, okay, all of verse 19, 20, and half of 21, that comforted them and that made them feel better. Or you could read it as sequential. He said the following, right? 19, 20, half of 21. And then he kept on talking to them, and he kept on trying to comfort them, and he kept on trying to talk to them emotionally and try to get to them, because that is what was at stake here. Would there be some trust? Would there be some emotional connection that he could establish with them? Right? His first statement is very noble, it's very beautiful, but it's also very official. Right? It still creates that distance. I'm not God. Don't worry. God has made everything happen. I get it. Parentheses, you don't. But believe me, I'm going to take care of you. And now he's then goes on to saying, okay, now that's out of the way. Now let's have a cup of coffee together. Let's have a drink. Let's sit back and let's finally talk to each other. Remember, talking has never been the strong suit of these brothers. They have never been able to talk to each other. So for him to talk to their hearts could be actually a breakthrough. Yeah. So let's now quickly read the rest of it because it's relevant. 22.
So Joseph and his father's household remained in Egypt. Joseph lived 110 years. Joseph lived to see children of the third generation of Ephraim. The children of Machir, son of Manasseh, were likewise born upon Joseph's knees.
So this is a nice kind of family, short little clips from the family videos of different scenes of happy children being born and grandchildren, and everybody's waving to the camera. And there's Uncle Joseph, waving and smiling. So you've got this kind of like passage of time. And actually, when you think about it, if you try to do some of the arithmetic, we're talking about decades of the brothers. 17 years elapsed between their coming down to Egypt and Jacob's death. But that makes Joseph, if you do the rough math, he was 17 when he got sold into slavery. Add another couple of years when he was in the prisons and this and that and the other thing. And then you've got 14 years of the famine. And then you've got 17 years of this. So 17 and 14 is 31. And so let's say 35 years. So 35 years. So 35 years and 17 is 52. So, and he lives to be 110. So he's got another 50 years or more that he and his family are living together in Egypt. And that just gets, taken care of with these very short little sentences. And back to all of our, remarks before, what do we imagine? How do we see what was going on? What was the interaction? We don't know. If we think about this as in a cinematic way, what are we going to find out from this last scene? Because those are really sort of like just generalizations. And now we have 24 where we get really personal. We have to just read it and then ponder it on our own. Let's go 24 till the end.
At length, Joseph said to his brothers, I am about to die. God will surely take notice of you and bring you up from this land to the land that he promised on oath to Abraham, to Isaac, and to Jacob. So Joseph made the sons of Israel swear, saying, when God has taken notice of you, you shall carry up my bones from here. Joseph died at the age of 110 years, and he was embalmed and placed in a coffin in Egypt.
Okay, so the last part of it, of course, is not, and the brothers did so, right? We're left before that with this scene. He's talking to them and he entrusts himself. Is he entrusting himself to them personally? No. He says, one of these days, you're going to get out of here. One of these days, God will take notice of you and bring you out of this land, just as God promised to the patriarchs. Don't leave me behind. So if, like I say, if this were a movie, what does this say about what possible development may have ensued over those 50 some odd years when the brothers and Joseph have to make a life one way or the other, connected, disconnected? How much are they? How much has healed? How much has been able to bring them together? For him to say this, for him to hope that this will come true and that they won't throw him in the pit again. All right, that's it for tonight. And yasher koach to everybody, and see you next year, I hope, when we start Shmot.
Yeah.
Happy New Year.